Man insults Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on a first-class flight, then realizes his huge mistake. Transcript: The Rock stood in the first-class line dressed simply just a blue plaid tee, shirt, worn-out jeans that had clearly seen the world. Next to him, a man in an expensive suit watched with disdain, unable to hide his arrogance. First class, how the man muttered with a smirk. What happened next would leave everyone on that plane speechless and change one life forever. John F. Kennedy International Airport was alive with movement. People hurried past each other. Flight announcements echoed over the intercom, and the sound of rolling luggage filled the air. It was a place where time never seemed to slow down. Everyone was in a rush, focused on getting to their destinations. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because we have more inspiring stories coming your way. Among the chaos in the first-class boarding line stood a man who didn't quite fit the usual mold of the wealthy travelers around him, while others wore expensive suits, designer watches, and carried luxury briefcases. A Rock stood calmly, wearing a blue plaid tee, shirt, worn-out jeans, had clearly seen many miles. His sneakers were scuffed, his posture relaxed, and his gaze observant, unlike the people around him who constantly checked their phones or looked impatiently at the boarding gate. He seemed at peace, as if he had nowhere else to be. But in that exact moment, behind him, Johan stood with an entirely different presence. He exuded confidence, or rather an arrogance that demanded to be noticed. His red suit was pressed to perfection, his Italian leather shoes polished so well they reflected the overhead lights. A luxury wristwatch peeked out from beneath his tailored cuff, and the subtle but unmistakable scent of an expensive cologne lingered in the air. Everything about him screamed wealth, success, and exclusivity. Johan surveyed the first-class line, nodding approvingly at those who, like him, belonged there: business executives, celebrities, and high-net-worth travelers. Then his eyes landed on The Rock. His expression shifted instantly, his lips curling into a slight smirk. "First Class B," muttered just loud enough for The Rock to hear. His voice lacked with sarcasm. The Rock turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "The word world is full of surprises," he replied simply, his voice calm and unaffected. Johan's smirk widened as he let out a soft chuckle. He had expected The Rock to stammer or appear uncomfortable, but instead the man remained completely composed, as if the comment didn't faze him in the slightest. Johan wasn't the type to let things go so easily. He took a small step closer, lowering his voice slightly, but keeping the same condescending tone. "Nothing personal, but you don't seem like the type who flies first class," he said, gesturing subtly to The Rock's clothes. The Rock didn't flinch. He simply tilted his head slightly, as if considering the statement. Then, instead of engaging further, he just let out a small, polite smile. The line started moving forward without another word. Dwayne stepped ahead, leaving Johan standing there, momentarily thrown off by the lack of reaction. He had been expecting some kind of defensiveness, maybe an excuse, but The Rock had given him nothing to work with. As Johan followed behind, he couldn't help but steal glances at the man in front of him. Something about The Rock felt off, not in a suspicious way, but in a way that Johan couldn't quite put his finger on. There was a quiet confidence in him, an ease that didn't match his appearance. Johan scoffed internally. Maybe he got lucky. Maybe someone gifted him a ticket. There's no way he belongs here. And yet, as they walked toward the plane, Johan had no idea that he was about to be proven completely wrong. The first-class boarding announcement echoed through the airport speakers, and the passengers in the exclusive line started moving forward. Business executives, celebrities, and well-dressed travelers adjusted their expensive carry-ons and prepared to step onto the jet bridge. Among them was The Rock, moving at his own relaxed pace, completely unbothered by the rush around him. Johan, standing just behind him, smirked to himself. He still couldn't wrap his head around the fact that this casually dressed man was flying first class. Maybe he won some kind of contest, he thought, or maybe someone bought the ticket for him. As they reached the boarding agent, The Rock handed over his ticket. The agent scanned it, nodded politely, and gestured for him to proceed. Johan, with his confident stride, stepped forward right after him, handing over his own first-class ticket, as if it were a badge of honor. Walking through the jet bridge, Johan felt the familiar thrill of entering a space meant for the elite. The moment he stepped onto the plane, the luxurious first-class cabin greeted him: wide plush seats, personal service, and the kind of comfort most travelers could only dream of. He smiled slightly relishingly. Exclusivity, but then as he glanced down at his boarding pass to confirm his seat, his confident expression faltered. "Seat 3A." He lifted his gaze and scanned the cabin moving down the aisle until his eyes landed on his seat, and that's when he saw that the Rock was already there settling comfortably into the seat right next to his. Richard stopped in his tracks for a moment, unable to believe it. His lips parted slightly in disbelief, his eyebrows, Doctor drawing together. No way out of all the places on this plane, out of all the possible seat assignments, it had to be here. The Rock noticed a hesitation, looked up at him, and gave a polite, knowing smile. Looks like we're traveling together then, he said calmly. Johann exhaled sharply, shaking his head. As he stepped into the row, you've got to be kidding me, he muttered under his breath. He sat down, placing his designer carry-on back bag under the seat in front of him. With just a little more force than necessary, he still couldn't believe his luck or lack of it. The flight attendants moved through the cabin, offering warm greetings and assisting passengers with their belongings. Johann leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, still processing the situation. He was used to first class being filled with people like him, powerful, wealthy, the kind of individuals who understood luxury, but this didn't make sense. After a few moments of silence, he turned to the Rock, still feeling the need to assert himself. So what do you do for a living, he asked casually, though the edge in his voice hinted at something more. The Rock, who had just finished adjusting his backpack under the seat, looked up with the same calm expression. I work in film, he replied simply. Johann raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Oh, I see, commercial small-time stuff, he asked with a slight chuckle, already assuming the answer. The Rock just gave a slight smile and shook his head, something like that, he responded. Johann smirked, shaking his head slightly. As he turned back toward the aisle, interesting, he muttered. The plane continued boarding, and the seats around them filled one by one, yet Johann couldn't shake the growing curiosity. Something about the Rock didn't add up, and soon he would find out just how wrong his assumptions were. As the flight took off, Johann couldn't resist striking up a conversation, though not in a friendly way. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because we have more inspiring stories coming your way. So what do you do for a living, he asked, his tone filled with curiosity, but also assumption. The Rock replied simply, I work in film. Johann raised an eyebrow. Oh, commercial, small-time stuff. The Rock just smiled, something like that. Johann chuckled. You know, not everyone is meant for a first class. Some places just aren't for certain people. The Rock remained calm. I believe we all end up where we meant to be. The conversation was subtle, but the tension was growing. Other passengers were starting to take notice. The in-flight service began. When the flight attendant reached their row, Johann made sure to be noticed. A glass of champagne, please, something that matches the exclusivity of this seat. Kanu, on the other hand, simply said, just water, please. Johann scoffed. Water in first class, you're wasting the experience. The Rock took the bottle, looked at it, and replied, Kel, sometimes simplicity is enough. Johann shook his head, smirking. That's the kind of thing people say when they settle for less passengers around them. Exchanged glances. The Rock, still unfazed, simply responded, maybe the best looks different for everyone. Johann wasn't used to being challenged like this, especially not by someone who didn't even seem to care. Life is like flying first class, Johann said, swirling his champagne. You work hard, earn your spot, and then you get to enjoy it. Some people are just lucky. The Rock placked his water bottle on the trade table and finally turned to Johann. Luck or hard work, in the end we all land in the same place, don't we? The words hit harder than Johann expected. The cabin went quiet. A few passengers nodded in agreement. Just then the flight attendant returned. Mr. Johnson, the captain wanted me to inform you that your connection in Tokyo is confirmed. He also sends his best regards. A wave of realization spread through first class. Johann froze. Johnson, he muttered. Passengers who had been quietly observing widened their eyes. Some even exchanged whispers. Johann turned back to the Rock, now looking at him as if seeing a ghost. You're the Rock. The Rock just smiled. Is something wrong? Johann stammered, trying to find the right words. I didn't mean, I just didn't know. The Rock sighed. Johann, what you said doesn't change. Just because you know my name now, the truth doesn't depend on who you're speaking to. It depends on how you treat people. Johann sat in silence, the weight of the Rock words settling in. The rest of the flight was quiet. The Rock read his book, complet, unbothered. Johann, on the other hand, couldn't stop replaying everything in his mind. As the plane landed, John finally turned to the Rock. I need to apologize, not because of who you are, but because I was arrogant. Dwayne simply nodded. Take care, Johann. And with that, the Rock walked away, greeted by fans who approached him with warmth and admiration. Johann stood there watching, realizing that true worth is not in wealth, but in kindness and humility. We often judge people based on appearances, assuming we know their worth. But as the Rock showed, true greatness isn't loud, it speaks through actions. So next time you find yourself in a moment of judgment, remember respect and humility never go out of style. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because we have more inspiring stories coming your way